All right, welcome. Welcome. I'm Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. Tonight is Thursday, July 14th. Look at that. All right, we got a action-packed night tonight for sure. For sure. Hey, can I get it? You got dates there? Is that what you're giving me? The grazing school and canning. All right. Cool. Thank you very much.
Ending times are, of course, dependent on Q&A. So.
All right. Our topic tonight is grazing, right? Cattle grazing. I suppose it could be applied to sheep and goats if you're into goats. And I've got a lot to say about grazing for sure. There's a lot to know about grazing. It isn't, if you haven't done it, it's nothing like you thought it was. And I want to get into that in depth tonight. Our sponsor tonight is Nomadic Media. Okay, so they're the good people that are producing our videos. If you've seen those over on the Anyone Can Farm Experience, also on Baker's Green Acres YouTube. Those videos are there for your pleasure to get inspired and motivated and equipped to get this job done. But then we feel as though we're kind of duty bound to go the extra mile and make classes available online. So if we make an online class or an online instructional and we post it over at bakersgreenacres.com, it's there for your viewing pleasure. All right. You have to pay, but that's the way that goes. You know, we put a lot of effort into it, and it's definitely a fair trade. Definitely a fair trade. And that's what we're all about, is fair trade in this game. All right. So just so happens we've got a grazing school. It's called the Grazing Intensive, and that's going to be July 23rd. That's a Saturday from 9 to 3. Okay. Coming up after that, August 6th, is going to be a canning class from 9 to 2. And that's going to be taught by our very own Rachel Jameson. The grazing school will be taught by Parker Holmes. I'll have a little bit of role to play in that as well. I'll be helping him a little bit, but there's just so much to know about grazing. And I want to kind of get into it tonight. And if you are listening now and you're not going to come to the class, well, you're going to get some of it. I would say, though, if you could come to the class, you would be equipped to go home and actually start this discipline. Because if you just think it through and you say, okay, grazing cattle, well, that's just putting cows out on a field and then they eat. It is so much more than that. So much more than that. It should probably be called pasture management. It would be a better pasture management through grazing of cattle. A good resource on this is a man by the name of Alan Savory. I met him years ago at a Weston A. Price Foundation meeting, and he's quite a famous guy. Not so much here in the United States, because grazing in the United States is kind of almost looked down on in some ways. An example, when we got to this farm, the fences here were badly deteriorated. A lot of the barbed wire was laying on the ground. It had sagged, and then the grass grew over it, and the snow, and no one took care of it, because grazing kind of was was put out of style by industrial agriculture. All right, so industrial agriculture brought on what's known as the concentrated animal feeding operation, or CAFO. And it's a building, and your animals are in the building and they never come out. So they never get sunlight, they never get fresh green grass. And then it creates a huge problem with their waste product, their manure, because you have a very intense amount of animals in a very small area. It's good in theory, I guess. It makes sense to do that if your bottom line is just dollars. But from the point of view of animal husbandry, it's horrible. I mean, it couldn't be any worse. The animals never see the light of day. They're always walking on concrete. They never get to eat grass. They never get to be the person that they were intended to be. You know, they're created as a cow. Cows are designed to graze. They're designed to eat grass. And then these guys come along and build these buildings, stuff thousands of them in there, literally thousands of them, and very close. And then, you know, because the animals are so prone to sickness because they're so boxed in, then they start walking the medications to them. And so that means the manure that's going out and the urine that's going out is heavily medicated. And then they spread it on fields and so on and so on. So it just gets worse and worse as you go. And the question is really, are you really getting more out of it? Are you really getting enough out of it to do it? Is it worth it? You know, to me, it's not worth it. I got into farming because of the quality of life. And I live a good quality life on this homestead. I'm not choked out by smells from my animals, but sometimes I do get choked out from the smells of, there's a CAFO that's 3 or 4 miles north of me, that when they stir their manure lagoon at midnight, we have to shut the windows in our house. It smells that bad. And so they do infringe on us, but we don't infringe on them. You know, it's one of those things. I think it's a part of the learning curve of agriculture. Industrial agriculture has only been around since the late 50s, mid 60s is when it really got rolling. In 70s, it really kind of took off. And ever since then, people have just trying to adjust to it. And it doesn't seem to be working very well from what I can see from my point of view. I mean, the prices of the products keep coming down. And if it were not for subsidies from the U.S. government, these places would never survive, right? So we'll see what happens. I'm not really here to slam that, but that's the antithesis of what we're talking about. Okay, so even a smaller operation like mine, I could have a lot where my cows stay, and it could be on dirt, and it could be several acres, and then I'm going cutting the hay, making bales out of it, and then bringing it up and taking it into that lot to feed them, and they never move out of that feed lot. So they're on dry hay 365 days a year. That was the first step, I think, towards concentrated animal feeding operations. That's what it looks like to me. I was just a little kid when they started that up, and then the whole time that I was in the service, I didn't know anything about it, and I never saw it. I wouldn't have known it if I did see it. So it was not anything that I thought about. In a case like that, you're bringing you're using equipment to harvest the grass. You have to dry the grass. You have to bale the grass up, and then you have to store the grass, and then you have to bring it to the cows. And then the cows eat it. They make manure and urine out of it, and then they let that go in that lot. And then I have to do that up, and I have to put sort of device and take it out on the field and spread it. Right. So there's a lot more machine work, right? The way that we are doing this, we are doing intensive grazing, is what it's called. And this is where the animals are the ones that go out on the field and they're doing the harvest. So they're doing the harvest with their teeth. They're biting it off, chewing it up, stand around for a while, manure out there on the field, and then they move on to another field. And they eat out there, they do some manuring out there, some urinating, and then they move on to another field. So what we like to do is move them off of the field daily. So it leaves their manure behind them. That's the idea, because you don't want them eating where they've manured. You don't want that. And you also need to consider the length of the grass that they're eating from. You don't want it to get too low, because you want it to be able to regenerate, right? This is a regenerative process. If I can put cows out on the field and the grass is a foot high and they eat 6 inches of it off, and then I move them the next day, and they're not back on this field for another week or two, they're coming back onto a field that is actually regenerated more than where it was when they were on it the first time. Because we have a season, it gets to a certain point and then the grass does not regenerate. But that's actually quite late in the season. Grass will grow quite well in October, November, even December, because you'll have a period in the day where if you were to go out and lay down on that grass, this is not every day in December, and you may have snowfall, so it wouldn't work then. But let's say you didn't have snowfall yet, and you got out there and you still have grass, there'll be a period in the day where it's quite warm, especially if you're laying down. It's quite warm. So that's the heat that your grass is getting. And yeah, it'll continue to grow. Not as much as it will grow like now. I mean, it's growing like crazy now. If you are mowing your lawn, now is when you see, how quickly the grass grows. So what we're looking at with grazing cattle is, let's just talk about a beef cow. That's a good way to talk about it. A beef cow can gain 2 to 2.5 pounds of body mass in a day. Doesn't mean they will, but they can. An average day might be 2.25. It depends on the type of beef that it is and where they are in their life. You may have noticed when you were a kid, you could eat pizza and all kinds of stuff. You never gained a pound. Then you get to be like 36 years old. And it's like, if you look at a pizza, you gain weight, right? So it's sort of like that in the life of a cow or of a bovine. At certain stages of their life, they're going to grow, they're going to put on more weight quicker. So but the rule of thumb is 2 to 2.5, somewhere in there. So if we just go with the low number, 2, right? Let's say it's 2 pounds of beef, and let's say the average, just somebody give me an average price of a pound of beef. Just somebody throw one out there. Okay, average, just average. I mean, you're going to have hamburger, but then on the top end, you're going to have the very high end cuts of meat. So let's just say $8. I'm not way out there. So if you're grazing a field that you're putting zero input in, $5.99, that's pretty low. Have you seen the price? But anyway, for burger, all right. My wool mitten, that's a good one. I wonder if you're from around here. That's the first time I've seen that. Let's go with $5.99, $6. So I'm gaining about $12 a day. And when I went to the first grazing school I went to, I actually went to two-day grazing schools that were put on by the Extension Service. This is many years ago. I don't know if they do it anymore. I don't think they're really into that anymore. But it was being conducted by a pretty senior guy. He left the Extension Service shortly after that, or maybe he wasn't even employed by them anymore, and he was just doing the class. But his name was Ben Bartlett, and he was quite famous around here as a grazing instructor. And he started off the class by saying, "You've all heard the saying, there ain't no free lunch." He says, well, by the time we finish with this class, you're going to see just how foolish that statement is. Okay, right? So it's like, okay, bring it on. Since then, I mean, this guy was, I wouldn't say he was a part of the what the establishment would say now. The establishment in the Extension Service and the universities and all that, they're pointing everybody towards industrial agriculture, because that's where, you know, their kickbacks come. You know, organic farmers like us, we don't contribute any money to any universities or anything like that. We just don't. Why should we? I mean, they're not doing anything for us. But the big industrial outfits, sure they do. Sure they do. There's other things that get said that are similar to that. And I don't know who made this one up, but I've gone into this one a little quite deep. And it's, there ain't no money in farming. Okay? There ain't no money in farming. So if you want to do a little calculation, let's say we're gaining $12 a day. And we're going to start making that gain, let's say May 1st. That's when I can get out on pasture here. So May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December 1st is when I come off. So let's just say a good solid 7 months, even if we just say 6 months. But I made it to January 1st one year. Not last year. I didn't go because my milk cows don't do as well on the nutrient value of the grass that late in the season. Beef cows, no problem. But the milk cows, no, they didn't. And their milk production suffered for it. So instead of splitting up the herd, I just brought everybody in. But we were out for a good solid 7 months on pasture. Right, so some of this pasture I manage different ways than others. Some of it's really bumpy and I don't cut it. So I will flash graze it, and then I will more intently graze it later in the season. Some of it is hayfield, and I will take a cutting off or 2 cuttings off, and that will grow back, and then I'll graze the cattle over it very quickly. And I do that for a couple reasons. Sometimes I will want to get some additional seeding in. And if I'm going to be grazing cattle over it, I can just go out and do a little seeding, just broadcast seeding. And when the cows are out there, they will push some of that in, right? So you get that action. You also get that disturbance that the cows walking over it, they disturb it, and it actually stimulates growth of the ground. It really does. I mean, this system was put together to work together. You know, you've got the field, you've got cows with hoofs, they're heavy animals. They were not supposed to be put on concrete. That was somebody's bright idea. Okay, so the other reason is we want to distribute their manure, right? So I could get all their manure in one place, scoop it all up, put it in a spreader, and take it out and spread it. But is that the way it was designed to work? The answer is no. The way it was designed to work actually works very good. If you do a little study, go out and watch cows, and then wait until one of them defecates. And then go and put a couple flags there, those little orange flags, and write on the flag the day If you want to get really cool, you can write the time on there, but just a day would be good enough, day and month. That would be fine, and year, right? And then if you have to update it. But then view that 1 year later, and then view it 2 years later, right? You're going to start out with a fertile looking spot. Once the cow goes there, they're not going to eat the grass that pokes through it. They won't. The next year, they might. I'm not saying they won't, but I'm saying they might not if they've got better stuff to eat. But that fertile looking spot that is approximately 4 inches bigger than the manure plop itself. We use the correct terminology here. It's plop. It's going to the fertility is going to be out about 4 inches around it in the first year. In the second year, it could be out as much as 2 feet. It depends on the fertility of the ground. You can't say for sure it will be like this because the soil, we're depending on microbes in the soil that when that plop hits the ground, they're saying, woohoo, party over at Dave's. Let's go. And then they go right in there and they propagate. You have a lot more microbes that are propagating inside that manure patty, and it gets spread out. Not only that, you'll have birds come down and land on that and eat maggots out of it. Not only that, some people will actually let their laying chickens out there, and those chickens they'll scatter all through that and they'll eat the maggots out of it. And the maggots are just, fly larvae. It sounds gross, but protein is protein. Not that the steak that I had for lunch today would be even close to a plate full of maggots. I probably wouldn't enjoy it nearly as much. And I don't know. Maybe that's the direction we're going. Hope not. I'm not going there. So we're disturbing the pasture and we are fertilizing the pasture. This is kind of important to know right now. All right. These techniques are kind of important to know. If you've heard in the news problems, I'll talk about farts in a minute. There's problems going on over in Sri Lanka and Holland. What's that all about? Oh, the government is trying to enforce Green New Deal policies. And so they're saying, well, you guys can't spread fertilizer on that field because we're trying to reduce the nitrogen in the environment. I did not know that nitrogen was a problem. I thought it was carbon dioxide that was a problem, right? But for a long time, that was, carbon dioxide, that stuff. Ooh, boy, that's bad stuff, they were saying. But back then, it wasn't climate change, it was global warming. So it was going to be, but now it's like, are we warming the planet up or cooling it off? And the politicians say, we'll let you know. It just depends how much we want to steal from you and how rough we want to make your lives. That's basically it, you all. You have to know that. There ain't no such thing as either of those things. For man to believe that he's going to affect, and that's what cow farts are all about. They're saying that cows farting is what is leading to global warming. It's the stupidest thing. And yet we've seen a population of people believe in some very stupid things. And the stupider the things that we believe in, the more things you realize that we've been believing in that are not true, that they've been, saying for a long time, and they shroud it in the science. And, if we were really concerned with actual science, the Extension Service would still be conducting grazing workshops. They would still, because that is really where it's at. If there is global warming or global cooling now, I'm not sure which one they're on. then it would affect the corn production, but it's not going to really affect the grass production. The grass production is really it's really versatile. It's really persistent. It's really tough. It can stand up to it. Corn, no, not so much. Corn, the inputs on corn is a lot. You see these beautiful cornfields. There's a lot of inputs to that, and a lot of the inputs you don't want to know. You don't want to know what they're spraying out there, right? It's scary what they spray. And eventually it all winds up in runoff in our lakes and streams, and eventually our big lakes and the oceans and stuff. It's actually criminal what they're doing. But all the people that work for these agencies that are supposed to be working for environmental protection are actually anything but environmental protection. It's like when they say the Department of Agriculture, you turn that 180 degrees. It's actually the Department of Anti-Agriculture. That's really what they're about, because most of the weenies there weren't in agriculture. They don't confer with people that do agriculture. They just have thoughts about it, and usually their thoughts are kind of a little twisted from what we've seen. I mean, I've given you this example before. We see the commander-in-chief coming out and saying that we're going to have food shortages, and yet you don't hear the Department of Agriculture saying, hey, come on, you guys, we got to get some planning done here to keep from starving. They don't. They're the ones that are saying, maybe you shouldn't grow chickens this year, because of bird flu. They're not really with us as far as the food production world. They're kind of somewhere else most of the time. So let's see, grazing. What are some of the components that you will need of grazing? You will definitely need to become very proficient at fence building. Very proficient. You have to have good fences. If you don't have fences, your cows will not stay where you want them to. You have to manage them via fence. And there's a couple different types of fences that we use. We'll use the permanent border fences. And on this farm, we've used woven wire and a strand of barbed wire on top. I think if I was going to do it over again, I don't know if I'd go that route. When I built these like 18 years ago, that was the advice that I got if I was going to do multi-species. And my philosophy on multi-species has changed. I believe multi-species on the farm is really good, but we're probably not going to share the same space at the same time. So my pigs will not be where my cattle are grazing. That's not going to happen. Simply because the pigs are really destructive, and the cows, they just walk over it and eat the grass, and then the grass comes back. So my job as the manager here is to make sure that the soil in my grazing area is as nutrient dense as I can possibly get it. Now, if money was not a limiting factor, I could get the most fertile soil that exists very quickly, right? But I'd be using up a lot of resources to do that. So we want to work that at a rate that you will get there. It's just going to take a little bit longer to do. And the reason I believe that it's more important for the manure to drop from the animal to the ground is because that's the way it was designed. If that manure sits out in a dry lot for 30 days before I scrape it up and then take it out and spread it, it's changed. It is totally changed. And can the ground process it the way it could if it came directly? No, not as good, because you'll go out there and spread manure. I mean, I used to do it this way, and you don't see an immediate kick, not at all. You might think you see a kick the next year, but you're really not too sure because, well, did I finish spreading right there? Well, I don't know. But when a cow drops one right out there, you see it right there. You'll see a big green spot right there, and it spreads. And after a while, the spots interconnect, and you just get this really nice carpet. And it varies, right? But if you think about the animals that were grazing the Great Plains, the bison, they had many, many thousands of miles that they were just walking and eating, always heading south in the wintertime, heading north in the summertime for the greener, lusher grasses. And so it went, back and forth. And that is what we're trying to simulate. We're trying to duplicate that, not duplicate. We're trying to simulate that process. That's what we're trying to do. And from a money point of view, if I was to just be cutting hay and storing it, I'm going to spend a lot more money on equipment and equipment operation. So diesel fuel, where I'm bringing the cows out, they're doing the harvest. I do save a lot of money. So we can do less cows, but we make more on each cow. In the CAFO model, they have way less people managing a whole lot of animals. It takes me a little bit more, but I make more on each animal because my bottom line doesn't shift because of the equipment expenses and all that stuff. So I'm actually doing better than the CAFO guys, and I'm doing better in other respects as well. The CAFO that's north of me, if you drive by there and you don't know it's an animal facility, then you wouldn't know it's an animal facility. You will not see an animal unless they have certain doors open and you're like, is that a cow? But from the road, you really can't see it. All the cows are inside. In the wintertime, you can't see anything there, right? And from a point of view of quality of life, I don't see it. I just don't see it. I wouldn't want to be involved with that. And this particular one, the people that own it don't even live around here. It was just an investment for them. And I think they're on the third group that has it now. And so the people that work there, they're not invested in it either. They're there for a paycheck and then they go home. So it's not like a family farm in any way. It's just I don't know. It could be anything going on, any kind of process going on there. Replicate. Yeah, replicate. Replicate. That's the word I was looking for, Vindicti. You knew what I meant. You knew what I meant. So, yeah, I'm a big grazer. I've made a lot of gains on this farm by grazing. In other words, when my animals are butcher weight, and then we process them here, I don't have a lot of my bottom line going away because I've got extensive machinery costs and extensive labor costs and extensive, fuel costs. I don't have that. I did have the cost up front of building the fences, but in 18 years, it's amortized out to very little, right? And those fences are still good, and they'll still be here long after I'm gone, right? All they have to be is maintained and picked up once in a while and just looked after a little bit, and they will last a long, long time, actually, long time. The steel posts that were on this place when we got here, you could tell were extremely old. The fence that was on it back in those days, it was just mild steel fencing. They didn't galvanize stuff. They didn't know how to do that, I guess. And the fence was completely rotted off, but the posts were still good. Matter of fact, I put some of them back in service. So they will last a long time. You can get a lot of use out of fencing. Barbed wire these days is galvanized and it lasts real long time. And for cattle, I would go with barbed wire with one strand electrified or two. maybe 2 strands electrified. I'd put up a 4-strand, and I'd electrify the bottom one and the top one, and that will keep any cow in. And it's not that hard to do. That would be my choice right now for cattle at this point, because you don't want them leaning over, and you also don't want them leaning under. The 2 strands in the middle, those could be grounds if you want. Around here, that's not so critical because we have very conductive soils, and I can get a really good fence charge going. Okay, let's see. What else do we want to talk about as far as that goes? Quality of meat from a grazed animal. You've heard grass finished. Hay is not grass. Grass is not hay. So if you say grass finished, that means that beef was butchered in the fall, and the last thing that it ate was green grass. That beef, in my opinion, is the best, right? So here's where the free lunch comes in. Let's say that I've got a dairy cow on this farm, which I have several dairy cows on this farm. I have 3 now. And they have a calf. I have to have them have a calf in order for them to freshen, right? Freshen meaning now they're going to be in milk, right? Where you dry them up for a month or 2 before they calf, so the energy goes into the calf and not the milk bucket. Usually 3 months is what they say. I know people that do far less, and I know people that do far more. I don't know. I don't have much of an opinion on that because I've seen really nice calves coming off of lactating cows. I have. And I've seen really poor calves coming off a cow that was dried off. And so whatever, that's not the conversation for today. And I don't know as I can actually solve that one anyway. It's just, it makes sense if the cow is making a calf that her milk is leaving, and there's a lot of energy in that milk, but maybe her system can make up for it. I'm not sure about that. I would have to look into that a little bit and scan my my memory banks a little bit, but that's not the conversation I really want to have right now. So let's say my milk cow has a calf. I don't have much into that calf. That cow has been paying for herself by giving me, 3, 4, 5, 6 gallons of milk a day. She had to have a calf in order to freshen. So I bred her. I get the calf. A lot of times the calf is of not a lot of great use because it may be a bull calf. And some of the dairy breed bull calves, they're not exactly the greatest growers, but they're adequate. And when I get them, it's not like I'm going to knock them in the head. So I'm going to let them grow out. Am I going to get the premium? No, but that's not really my goal here anyway. My goal is beef. I'm not really looking for prime grade A USDA beef because I think a lot of that is BS anyway. USDA puts a sticker on something and then you paying 30% more. Yeah. Okay, the experts at the USDA. So I have this calf, let's say. What do I really have in that calf? Not much. And then I graze that calf for the rest of the season. Going to calf in the spring. She grazes for the rest of the season, or he. That winter, we go on hay for 6 months, let's say. And then the next spring, we get a full year of grass. And then possibly we might say, okay, it's time to beef this little fella here. We might beef this. What do I really have into that? Let's say we harvest, let's see, 600 pounds of beef off there. And let's say we grind it all. Let's just say for the sake of, Got to find my calculator here. That thing hides on me every time. There it is. Okay, so let's say I get 600 pounds of beef off of her. Would that be, okay, let's say 500. 500 pounds of beef, and we're going to grind it all. So every piece we can, we're going to grind it, and we'll sell it for $5.99. And I want to remind you again, there ain't no money in farming. Okay, that's one beef. That's one beef. That is not the porterhouses. That is not the T-bones. That's not the filet mignon. That's not those nice roasts off the rump. No, that's just the entire thing burgered. So what would it be if we did all that? It's pretty hard for me to actually figure that out here. And I'm going to throw a number at you, but you might question it, but I wouldn't question it because I've been doing this. How about that number right there? Now that's with us doing the butchering and selling it right off of us. How do you like them apples? And what do I have into that? Not a lot. Not a lot. You know why? Because I'm not paying for the sunlight. I'm not paying for the rain. I'm not paying for the wind. Ooh, with all that nice oxygen in it and nitrogen and carbon dioxide. I'm not paying for that, right? So there's a lot that I'm getting that I'm not paying for. And plus the calf, like I said, I really didn't pay for the calf. The calf was a byproduct of my milk cow having a calf. Okay. So there you go. I mean, you have to look at this from the point of view of how do we make this work? So let's say I was to do 10 of those. All right. We just add a 0 there. That's 10 mama cows. And, you know, let's say they're beef cows. Let's say they're beef cows. So you are getting those really primo cuts and you get really good at cutting beef. You know, you're as good as anybody that there is around. You are going to beat that $5,000 mark. You're going to. So the notion that there ain't no money in farming is absolute baloney. I'm not saying that you can do this because right now you might not know how to slaughter a beef. But did you know how to ride a bike before you know, what? At one point you didn't know how to ride a bike. What am I trying to say? At one point you didn't know how to ride a bike, but now you do, right? You might be saying, well, I don't know how to fill in the blanks. I don't know how to style my hair like Mark's, but I'm going to be giving a class on that. No, I'm just kidding. But any of these skills on the farm can be acquired. Just like anything that we do, you can acquire the skills. It doesn't really matter how young you are, how old you are. It's just a question of saying, you know what? I want to know how to butcher beef. We've got right now, I totaled them up the other day. There is 12 people in our group right here, the tribe, that have broken ground or have completed construction on a butchering facility. And many of these people have come to our classes to learn how to butcher pigs and come right on site, and we've taught them. And then they go home and they do it. You know what? They've got a skill that might save their lives someday. It's a skill that eases your mind when you hear the commander in chief come out and say, hey, there's going to be food shortages. Just get used to it. Get used to being hungry, y'all. You know, it eases your mind because you think, well, I can butcher a pig. Excuse me. So if you can butcher a pig, you could butcher a porcupine. It's basically the same. And when you are butchering a pig, the way we teach, we have our homestead hog harvest classes every year. We've already got people signed up this year. If you're hearing my voice, you're going to want to sign up for this class. But once you go through this class, you will learn the intimate process of processing an animal, process of processing. And along the way, you'll learn that, hey, I can do this. I can do this. Is it going to, I mean, were you, when you first learned how to ski, were you Jean-Claude Killy? No, you hardly make it to the chairlift, and then you make it down the first time. Whoa, I made it down without falling 15 times, and then the next time you go, you get a little better, a little better. And then before you know it, you're skiing as good as me. I'm way beyond Jean-Claude Killy. It's like any of these things, you can learn this. Will you be the premier beef butcherer right off the bat? No, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to eat your mistakes, right? There's a big difference between a steak that's a little thick on one end and a little thin on the other end. It doesn't quite look right, but it's clean. And it is from a healthy animal, and you can pack it up and freeze it. And you take it out, you fry it up. It might be the best steak you ever had, but it might not look quite right. Who cares? Who cares? You're accomplishing something here that very few people do. And that's why we have the huge problem that we have right now with this choke point of the processing facilities. So I can't stress enough to get out there and get yourself trained on processing. So we're going to open up a beef processing class this year. So it's a huge undertaking. We did it last year, kind of impromptu, like we didn't actually charge for the class and we just did it with our friends because we weren't sure, what it would look like exactly. And I didn't want to be too embarrassed saying that I know how to do this and then, confuse people. There again, the commercial meat cutters around here, they probably cut circles around me because they do it every day, day in and day out. I don't. I do 10 of them a year, here at our facility. Pigs, I might do 25 a year. So I'm not doing it every day, but I get it done well enough that what I had for dinner tonight was perfectly good fare, perfectly good table fare. And I had a steak for lunch too. I had a cold steak for lunch. It was excellent. I ate it cold. It was mostly cooked, and I ate it cold with a lot of salt on it. I cut it in nice thin strips and stuff, and it was outstanding. Outstanding. Made me just charged. I was ready to go. All right. So I'm going to hit a couple of these questions here. Keep in mind that this format is changing. And we've done away with the Wednesday night, the Q&A. We've done away with that. That is actually going to be part of the consulting function. If you really want to do some heavy duty questions about this, you can become member of the Tribe Plus, and then you have access to me real time for your needs, whatever you want to set up. So that's the direction that it's going. It hasn't happened quite yet, but that's where it's going. Okay, my wool mittens. I signed up for the grazing class. Oh, yeah. Welcome to the... Yeah, right on. Good. Looking forward to seeing you. Abundant Living, that's Jill, by the way. That's my wife. So she's one that said that. Okay, good. Andy's with us. $5.99 for beef. All right. All right. Stayed awake just to hear about the farts. Sorry. I think that's more of the BS that they, that the scientific community likes to tell us about. Cow farts. Yeah. So we all got to start eating grasshoppers for the children. Baby seals are dying in Antarctica. All right, Inga. The Netherlands farmers are going through hell with the nitrogen narrative. Land confiscated, farmers rioting. It's chaos over there. Yeah, it is. But the farmers over there, especially like you wouldn't think, but I think the Netherlands Dutch people are different than American Dutch people. But they're going head to head with the authorities there. And I understand that the police fired on some farmers, and that's a bad deal. And from what I'm hearing, the farmers got together and bought a tank. That's what I'm hearing. And, they're kind of like, oh, you want to do it this way? Okay. Police, farmers. Oh, this is going to turn out really good, really good. I would not want to go up against farmers. I just wouldn't. Okay. Okay, you have grass and hay into him, whatever that's worth to you, but you got the fertility from his manure and meat and byproduct he gives you. Yeah, and this is quality of life too. So I'm getting superb quality beef. And I'll tell you something, we way too often just say, oh, well, grass-fed beef off Baker's Green Acres. Well, it can't be as good as the porterhouses from Walmart. Can't. No, that's not true. Not true at all. Good quality beef will actually build a healthy body. Feedlotted animals from Nebraska, what are they feeding them? What goes into feedlot beef? Do a little search sometime and you'll say, gee, would I want to eat that? No, you wouldn't. But that's what they're feeding them. Okay. Vindicti, I hope. Okay, I'm going to add you to the list, bro. I hope to have a butcher shop the next 2 years. Been obsessively watching butchering videos lately. I'm adding you to the list. Have you done? If you're watching videos, that's good enough. You make the list. My Will Mittens is saying, but I know I've got room for improvement. Reason for taking the class. Whenever we do a class, and it's face to face, and you're right with people, they ask you a question, and the question, it seems to mean more, and a lot of times it can draw out of the guy that's actually doing this day in and day out more information than you would on a video presentation, believe it or not. That face-to-face is so important. And whenever I go and take classes other places, I go there expecting to be motivated. I expect it, or else I wouldn't go. I was explaining this today to a friend. We were talking about the carnivore diet. And when I first got turned on to the carnivore diet, the first 3-4 days, not so good. 5th day, really not so good. 6th day, I haven't felt like this since I was a kid. It's like I was in touch with everything. It was like a buzz. It was a buzz, and it lasted for quite a long time. I'm talking months, and then you get kind of used to it. You get used to operating at a high level, and then I slipped into eating vegetables again, but then I know that I can get that back. But I think maybe the buzz that I got was probably better than you all would get if you're eating out of the store, because my animals are storing sunlight. They're actually storing sunlight in their fat, and then I'm consuming that, and it unleashes in my body. I mean, they were put here for me, and to think that oh, don't eat the fat, it'll make you fat. Well, then why were they designed with fat on them if we're not supposed to eat it, if they're given to us for food? So you start chasing that good feeling, and you never want to go back to eating garbage food again. You don't want to. Not saying that you won't. You once you do, you think like, boy, a piece of pepperoni pizza, that sure would be good. Go ahead and do it. See how you feel the next day. Ooh, 12 pack of Budweiser. That sounds like a lot of fun. See how you feel the next day. You know, it'll kind of keep you from doing that, you know. Same thing with swimming in the pool, 6:30 in the morning when it's freezing cold outside. You say, that doesn't sound like fun, but you get out of the pool and come in the house, and it's like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to fill in the blanks. Yeah, the room for improvement, you know, I can only really go into so much on here. And what we really want is we really want people to come to the grazing school. That is our mission. What do you estimate the cost for all the essential equipment to butcher? Been trying to estimate that myself, watching others. Well, the word that you're using here, Vindicti, is essential. So I have a Leatherman on my belt. I could butcher a cow with that. I could. That's essential. I don't think I could butcher a cow without a knife. I don't. We've talked about that, and you know, with the implements that I have at my disposal, like flint and you know, flagstone and stuff like that, I don't know as I could do it. I am quite sure I could get usable pieces of meat off that I could put on a skewer and put over a fire, or eat it raw if I chose to. I could do that. But you're going to want to have a really good sharp knife, or two, probably two. You're going to want a means to get that really sharp, razor sharp, because you have to skin that animal out. You have to knock the hoofs off and all that stuff. Take the head off, all that stuff. So you want a couple of knives to do it. And you need some way of picking the animal up. So an overhead hoist, like a 1-ton chain fall, you know, you can get those things. The one I have, I've had for 20 years, and I didn't pay even $80 for it. It just keeps working fine. You just keep the WD-40 to it. It just keeps going. Some place to hang it, whether it's a tree or a couple of phone poles with a chunk of phone pole across the top. You got to be up around 15 feet, 15, 16 feet, and you're safe. You got to have a gun to put them down. There's not another way that I can think of that you're going to want to do that. Some cultures, they use a knife under here, and they'll just do that. I don't know. I don't like that. I mean, that's the essential. If you want to get better from there, then you're talking a bandsaw, which I just got a bandsaw this year. We were just cutting really thick steaks right at the rib bone, so each steak had a rib in it, you know, for the off the back. A bone saw, you know, it's like a huge hacksaw. They're not much. They're about $50. Your knife set should be about $50. Your stuff to sharpen it up, like a butcher steel and a stone, probably another $100. So it's not much when you consider I could probably go to a farm around here because there's such a backup in processing, and say, well, how much for that beef right there? and I could probably get one for $500. A nice beef, maybe it, a mama cow or something, a cull, and then because we're able to butcher it, we're able to. It's sort of like in my backyard. I'm sure someplace out there there's gold. I'm sure it's there, but you have to dig it all up and find it. So yeah, there's gold in my backyard, but the trick is digging it up and finding it, right? That's the trick. But I know there's got to be some there, right? But like with a beef, oh, look at those nice cattle out there, and he only wants $500 a piece for them. But then you got to figure out a way to get it from that field into your freezer or into a can or other ways of preserving it. And that's the trick. That's the trick. Oh, this is good. This is good. The Ghost. Oh, Lucky Lager. Right. That's the quality stuff, my man. Yeah, that's the good stuff. Yep. Cool. My wool mittens. Sounds like you're leaning forward, and that's great. That's what we want. Part of what's happening with this movement that we're involved with here, that we just started off by a Q&A, is we're getting a tremendous amount of enthusiasm towards this. And you have people who were kind of like, I'll let somebody else do the butchering. I'll let somebody else raise the beef. And now they're saying, no, I want it all. I want to do it all. And all we have to do is provide them with the opportunity and, the safety and the assurance that if you walk through one of these classes, you'll come out the other side knowing how to do this. And then it's up to you. A hanging cellar fridge is essential. No. No, not at all. Like I butcher beef in the cold months. I would never do one now. As a matter of fact, if you went and put in, you're in where the heck is Vindicti at? You're in someplace warm, I think, aren't you, Vindicti? You're in, I don't remember where, but there's got to be a couple of months where it's kind of cool there. That's when you're going to want to butcher. If you wanted to open up a commercial processing or a farm processing, and that was what you were going to do, like 12 months out of the year, yeah, then you'd want to invest in what's called HVAC, the heating and cooling, to cool down an area where you could get a beef in to cool it down after it's killed, right? In my case here, it gets really cold in the wintertime, so I can kill and split a beef, and I can just leave it in the outer shop of my butcher shop, and I can, crack a window open and it'll cool it down just fine. And then I'll get back to it in a week. And certain parts of it we'll cut off and we'll put it in our cooler so it can age in the cooler. And mostly like what they call the saddle off the back, we'll put that in the cooler. But other cuts that we're just going to burger or make roasts or stew meat, or let's see. Yeah, that's about it. We're just going to chunk them off after about a week. So we're not going to hang the entire beef for 10 days. Not going to do it. Don't need to. Yeah, Arkansas. All right. So it gets cold there in the wintertime. You'd have a couple months in the winter where you could knock out some beef or minimal HVAC. Like you could do an air conditioning with a cool bot on it, something like that. Yeah. Because you're not getting, air conditioner with a cool bot probably wouldn't work in Texas when it's 105 outside. But it will work at a place where it's going to get up to maybe 40 during the day. You could bring it down to 32. You want to hang beef at about 36, 8 right in there. That's where you want to hang it. So, okay, I'm going to end it right there. I appreciate people coming by. Please check out on bakersgreenacres.com. Check out the grazing school that's coming up on July 23rd here at Baker's Green Acres. You can't go wrong. Our classes are always fun and informative. We have a good time. I'm still hungover from Tribe Day, and I don't mean from Lucky Lager. I didn't have anything like that, but just the amount of people and the amount of information, the amount of fun that we had. I got a great night's sleep last night. It's the first one since it ended on Sunday. Right? So we always have good times. So I hope everybody makes it. We'll be back at you tomorrow night. It's going to be our open line, and we will answer some questions tomorrow night. So get in on those questions while you can before you have to be in the Tribe Plus. All right. Good night. Remember, anyone can farm. See you tomorrow.